My friends, we are live. Welcome. Hola. ¿Cómo estás? We got the sound effects going. And it is the February 23rd, 2021 version of Remodelers on the Rise. This is the live show. This week it is it's the one and only show. I am going to be tied up on Thursday. Typically, you'll hear this show live at 12 o'clock p.m. Eastern, Tuesday and Thursday. This week, just Tuesday, so it better stinking be good if we're only doing one of them. I would love to hear, for those of you signing in to watch live, or if you're watching this replay, what's your one word open? This is a great way to start your team meetings, by the way. It gets everybody in the meeting talking and speaking right up front. And it's just, hey, what's one word on how you're feeling? And you share your one word. Mine is solid. That's how I'm feeling right now. Feeling relatively caught up. Good day so far. Reasonable amount of workload this afternoon. Solid. Or it also says, or you could also put in the old chat box, I just finished a oatmeal Scotty cookie made by my mother, Penny Hunt. We did some sledding down at their house this weekend, and I came home with a bag of my favorite cookies. So if you'd also like to share your favorite food, that would also be a fun way to get the party started here. Michael says hello. Nancy says hello. Excellent. All right. So we're going to get into the topics today. Just a nice little set of different items I have for you. And I would love to also get your feedback and or questions as we move along. The first one here. This is me talking to my son, Thomas, after his second basketball game of the year last night. I said, buddy, you have another gear of intensity that you have not tapped. Remember when you and Bennett, his cousin, back when they were younger, he's 14 now. Remember when you used to go kind of rage mode on Bennett? You guys were kind of arguing, fighting a little bit when you were little boys. You know, that not necessarily out of control intensity, but that intensity is out there. I'm watching him play basketball. The first half of both games, a little timid, kind of not wanting to make mistakes. The second half, a little bit more intense on defense, a little more in their face, a little bit more crashing the boards. But I know he's got a whole nother level, maybe two levels of intensity that he can bring to the court. And he's got another game tonight. And that analogy, I think, also plays well into as non-athletes, or as I like to say, I used to be an athlete. It also plays well with business owners. I think there's a level of intensity and another gear that a lot of us have that we don't tap into very often. Sometimes it's because we don't know what's there. Sometimes we just don't think about it. But there is a level of focus. There's a level of intensity that I think we each can go to more often. So I want you just to kind of think about that in particular. And this analogy actually came up on a coaching call I had this morning with Josh Nelson, longtime client over in Holland, Michigan. Beautiful Holland, Michigan. Known for their Tulip Festival in the spring of every year. Fun fact. It's right on the Lakeshore, Michigan. And what I'm hearing from Josh between my last phone call with him and my call this morning is an increase in intensity when it comes to recruiting new employees. He's gone from, I need to do this. I need to get better at this. I need to put some effort in. I think I'm going to maybe call somebody, to this next level of intensity where he's going through his local home builder association. And he's picking up phone and he's calling people just to introduce himself, see if they're interested in taking on any additional work. He's looking for trade partners. Maybe there's some business owners out there that also want to join forces. He's going through all of these resumes of people he's had good interviews with over the last 5 or 6 years. And he said, I'm going to pick up the phone and I'm going to call them. Who knows how they're feeling? Maybe they're looking for a new opportunity, maybe not. And he's going through this additional things that he's going to do to get active with recruiting, just a whole nother level of intensity and focus that he's going to put on it. And I think that's good for all of us to hear. There's things that we need to be more intense, more purposeful, more focused on. And there's an example from JV basketball and also how that was applied to one of my clients this morning. I hope that's helpful. By golly, because that's why I'm even doing this show, is to share with you guys something that is helpful. Favorite food. Michael chimed into the favorite food. Ramen, the real stuff. So what Michael's talking about is if you go to your local grocery store, there's these little little plastic containers, and they're about this wide and yay long, and you just boil some water, and then you throw that stuff in there, you swirl it for a little bit, and then you drain it, and then you pour this little packet of stuff on there. That, my friend, is what he's talking about. Ramen, the real stuff. It is delicious. I would agree. Nothing beats real ramen. Yes, exactly like I'm talking about. That stuff that you get at the grocery store. I agree, gentlemen or lady, whoever that person is. All right, moving on to the next item. This one, I just want to go a little bit into some numbers. If I were to ask you, what are your, I should say, hang on un momento. What is your? Which is it? Which are your total expenses? What is your total expenses? We're going with is. Bailey's watching. She's probably getting a little upset at my poor vocabulary. She'll fix it. What is your total expenses? What are your total expenses for the year? I think it's A-R-E. What are your total expenses for the year? You know how I and others and a bunch of people always talk about knowing your numbers? Knowing your numbers. This is one example of knowing your numbers. I have changed it back to what are your total expenses for the year. That was correct. When you think about that part of your business is a lot more predictable than necessarily your top line sales, your cost of goods sold, your gross profit, etc. I just went through this exercise with a client down in Florida. Hi, Sean. Recently, and he really itemed out all of his expenses, and he's got his total for the year. He knows what his total per month is, and it helps him understand what his top line revenue needs to be at, where his break even point is, how his expenses have increased and decreased over the last few years. He just has a good handle on that big section of his business budget. So it's just a little challenge of, do you know what your total expenses are for the year? Dig into that and go line by line through. Secondly, what's your sales goal for the year? We're about 2 months through the year now, and if you had a $1.2 million goal for this year, we don't have to obsess over it if we're a little behind or a little ahead, but you should be around $200,000 of produced sales so far this year. Again, if you're below that, it's not the end of the world. A lot of times, those summer months, we end up producing more than other times of the year. But I, as a business coach, believe you, as a remodeler, should have some type of sales goal for the year. And I also think it's good to pay attention to that and to see kind of how you're pacing on that. So this is just me asking a question for you to either answer for yourself or you to comment on, and just to get you thinking about those numbers. And then the last number that I just wanted to throw out there, and these are two numbers, is a couple other very important know your numbers. And hang on one second. Just had to go back to the ramen thing, not the packet stuff. I thought that was the real ramen. Dude, and you never drain the water. You always add some starchy water to the broth at the end. Okay. And Bailey said, what are? All right, so we're all caught up there. I don't know what Michael's even talking about. It's confusing me. These last numbers of what's your goal for cost of goods sold and gross profit percentages. This is an area that, again, ties in with know your numbers. Know your numbers. When we look at our total cost of goods sold and divide that by our total sales, it spits out a percentage. Let's say it is 65%. If we take our gross profit dollars divided by our total sales, it spits out a percentage. Let's say it's 35%. It is very important for you as a remodeler to know those numbers and to pay attention to those global numbers that are part of your profit and loss statement. Note, when you look at that 35% gross profit percentage, that is a margin, not a markup. That is a margin. And I'm going there, even though I'm going there just for a moment, I just wanted to do just a quick little thing on markup versus margin. It is something that we could talk about for hours and hours. But let me share just my screen, and let me share this, and let me share this. If you guys just search markup versus margin chart, you'll see all kinds of items there. And here's an example of one. Markup and margin are different things. I am somebody who teaches calculating our price based on markup, but we also need to understand how markup and margin play together. So for example, when I was talking about, let me just go through a couple things. A 35% markup equals a 26% margin. 40% markup equals a 29, rounding up, percent margin. 50% markup equals a 33% margin. This margin is that gross profit percentage. Your total gross profit dollars divided by total sales equals your gross profit margin. Okay, so again, 1.67 markup equals a 40% margin, meaning your cost of goods sold is going to be 60%. Your gross profit margin is going to be 40%. Okay, so just a little reminder on that. Best practices, best goals to shoot for in our industry. A lot of folks will say, you know, definitely don't want your gross profit to be less than 30. A lot of the kind of the gold standard is around 40% gross profit margin. And there's a lot of different ways to calculate that. There's more depth into it. But for the sake of today, the reason I brought it up is I was just thinking about numbers. I was thinking about the importance of knowing your numbers. And I just want you thinking about what your total expenses are for the year, making sure you've got that number in your mind, what your sales goal is for the year, and what is your goal for cost of goods sold and gross profit. Pay attention to that. And also, if that markup versus margin thing, if that markup versus margin thing was super confusing to you, if you reach out to me, you can do it in a comment. We'll catch it there. If you reach out via email, kyle@remodelyourmarketing.com, I will send you a little 30-minute lesson that's part of a paid course that I did where I dig into that. And because you are a wonderful listener of the Remodelers on the Rise show, I'll be happy to send that to you. Just email me and say, Kyle, can I get that little teaching that you are offering related to markup versus margin? If you're listening to this on the podcast afterwards, if you're listening to this live, feel free to request that. Michael says, those numbers matter, but why? Do folks understand what knowing those numbers mean and the implication? It's a good question. It's a good question. We've got a bunch of likes. Hi, Bram. Hi, Nancy. Hi, Kevin. How would I answer that? Those numbers matter, but why? Why do those numbers matter? Here's one reason. Because you work your stinking face off. This business is really hard, and it's not very much fun when at the end of the day, there's not a lot of money left over to pay for yourself. There's one reason. When you don't know these numbers, in particular, when we get into that cost of goods sold and the gross profit and even the expenses, when you don't know those numbers, when you're not paying attention to that, money just slips away. And we're left scratching our head going, where is it? Where did it go? Where is it at? I'm doing a 1.67 markup, but that's not equating to a gross profit of 40%. What's going on? There's reason for it. You got slippage. It's taking you longer than what you estimated. It's costing you more than what you estimated. You know, that gets into job costing. So, Michael, that's one answer of a dozen, right, on why that matters. But when you know your numbers, you're a better estimator. You're a better salesperson because you're more confident in saying, I've got to sell at this because I know my numbers. And no more of this waffling and selling it for cheaper. You're a better business person. You're able to, when you really know these numbers, you can really understand, you know, what you can afford to do as far as benefits go. There's a million things that go into that. But there's a few thoughts. I would welcome your comments on why knowing those numbers matter as well. Next one up. What do I got? What do I got? Oh, this one. This one says, and. This one says, and. We're going in the old archives. This is a piece of content that I created on July 30th, 2018, 2.5 years ago. And it was a little Gary V phrase. This is what it says. He's got this phrase that's just one word. And. So here's his thought behind it. Okay, so the thought behind it is, okay, so what are you going to do about it? Yes, it stinks. Yes, it's tough. And. Oh, finding good carpenters is tough. And I've sold a bunch of work. Now I don't have enough to help to produce it. I've been focused on production. Now I don't have any jobs lined up. Could be either end of that. The response could be, and it's hard to find balance, you know, my work and my home responsibilities. And I don't have time to market my business effectively. And so you hear what that's getting at? It's not being rude. It's not being mean, but it is getting to the point of, okay, that's your situation. Okay, that's a predicament. Okay, that's a challenge you have. And because eventually, once we get past making excuses Once we get past saying, woe is me, we've got to get to that next part of saying, and what am I going to do about it? How am I going to make this better? What's the next right thing for me to work on? It's actually kind of a somewhat cruel response when somebody says, I'm so stressed about this. And, well, you don't understand. This is and, right? It's a loving thing at the same time because it's trying to drive somebody to, all right, now let's get to the point. Now that you've vented, what are we going to do about it? There's things that I think some of us have been whining about for months and months or years and years. And sometimes it is good to hear somebody go, and you get it? I think that's a helpful, powerful thing. And I hope you like that. Moving on to the next item. This is a phrase I think I might have learned it way back when I was doing college painters. I did that whole college painting thing for a summer between my freshman and sophomore year of college. Learned a lot through that. Made some money. I used that money to buy my girlfriend at the time's engagement ring, who's now my wife. So that's a fond memory. It was also very stressful that summer, selling and keeping my crew busy. But I learned this phrase there, and I've heard it over the years. Move quickly, don't rush. Move quickly, don't rush. What a good phrase to talk to your team about, your designers about, your trade partners about. Look, I want you to move quickly, but don't rush. You know, it can be part of kind of your culture. We hustle, we move quick, we don't waste a lot of time, but we also don't rush. Where's that balance between move quickly, don't rush? That might be a phrase that we should put on a t-shirt. And it might be a phrase that you hear on the Remodelers on the Rise show out of my mouth that you end up repeating to some of your team members this upcoming day or week. I'd love nothing more than that. All right, next one up is this phrase that says, don't break the chain. I don't want to brag. I don't want to boast. But after like 2 months of barely doing any physical activity, I got a little chain going. Don't break the chain. Got a chain of 100 sit-ups a day going for 7 days straight, my friends. It's like rock down there now. Just 7 days, I'm all good. Don't break the chain. This is a phrase that I heard from Jerry Seinfeld. And what it was is somebody was interviewing him, and they asked him a question. How is it that you write content, like your jokes, your material? You just keep coming up with stuff. What's your secret? And here's somebody that is one of the most prolific comedians of our era. And his answer was, he took him over to a kind of nondescript little calendar on the board. And next to each day, there was a big red X. And he says, my key is that I don't break the chain. And the interviewer's like, what does that mean? And he goes, I don't break the chain. Every day, whether it's for 5 minutes or 5 hours, I write something. I don't break the chain. And for him, he has kept that chain going, that streak going for years and years and years and years. One, isn't it interesting that one of the more prolific comedians of our time, his key is consistency? That's interesting. How much of our overall improvement comes down to just being consistent. And I took that idea and you can apply that in a lot of different ways. But what is your don't break the chain? What is your don't break the chain? What's something that you could be doing every day that you know by consistently doing it, it's going to help with a result that you're looking for in your life or business, where you can play this little mental game of don't break the chain. Don't break the chain. For some reason, for me, when I heard that a few years ago, and I was actually at a hotel in West Hartford, Connecticut, visiting a client out there, and I heard that, and I started a little bit of a sit-up chain then. And I think my longest chain has been like 70 days, and then I break it. And then sometimes I get right back on the saddle. Sometimes it takes a while. But that's been mine. And I think there's a lot of other ways that you can apply this principle of don't break the chain. And I wanted to share it on the Remodelers on the Rise live show, again, in hopes that it sparks a little idea for you. All right, rock and roll. What's a question that you guys have? I see a bunch of you watching live. What's a question that you have? What is a takeaway even that you've had so far? We have covered a little bit of talking about another gear of intensity and how to apply that. Talked about some numbers, in particular, kind of dove into that cost of goods sold percentage and gross profit percentage. Talked about on how we can push past excuses and get to solutions. Talked about move quickly, don't rush. Talked about don't break the chain. We got a comment here from Michael. What does it mean if we offer a 20% discount on the job that I marked up 35%? Did I make money? Yes, you made money. You just didn't make as much money as you needed and should have. I hear that phrase often. It always makes me stop of going, somebody that says, I didn't make any money on that project. Time out. You're telling me that the amount of dollars that you collected, 20,000, that your cost on that project was greater than 20,000? Well, no, that's not it. It was still less than that. I just didn't make any money on it, right? So when I hear that of just like I discounted 20%, I marked it up 35%. Now in that case, if we look at our markup versus margin, 35%, yeah, you still had a 6% gross profit margin difference between that markup and what the margin comes to. But the real thing to think about is, yes, you still made money, but you did not make as much money as you should have or needed to. Okay, cool. All right, rock and roll. What are some other questions that you guys have or a takeaway from what I have shared so far? I had a couple quotes that I had just jotted down in the notes in case you all were quiet and didn't have any questions. I've already gone through 6 or 7 topics. This is one, I think I saw it. I think, you know where I saw this? I think I saw it at the bottom of a Michael Stone article recently. And it's a Vincent van Gogh quote. And it says, great things are not done by impulse, but by a series of small things brought together. Let me read it again because there's a lot of wisdom in that statement. Great things are not done by impulse, but by a series of small things brought together. I think that kind of can tie in a little bit with that don't break the chain and what are you focused on doing consistently. Another quote that I had written down said, perfection is the enemy of progress. We're all guilty of that in some way, some form, of wanting things to be just right before we launch something, before we get it out there, before we ship it out. Perfection is the enemy of progress. We learn so much by just getting it out into the world and having somebody either consume it or give feedback on it. Make sure that you're not waiting until everything's perfect to get it out the door. If you were to set up a day/daily schedule that optimized productivity, what would it look like? That's a good question. And my head has not been, it's interesting that some of the things I'm talking about is being consistent. I've kind of been turned off lately by the consistent drive for every moment of every day to be productive. I don't know, it seems to be kind of just turning me off a little bit lately. And you're hearing the person that's saying those words is somebody that likes to be really productive and to optimize every moment of every day. So you're asking that question at a time where I'm kind of like, it's kind of not where my head's at. Let's have some fluidity. Let's have some ability to just be creative. Let's make sure we're not tying everything down into these little boxes that we have to. Let's make sure that if our day is not perfectly productive, that does not connotate a bad day. Yet we should still be organized. So Bailey, if I were to answer that question after saying all those words, to me, what it looks like is staying off social media. That's a huge time suck for so many of us, myself included. So I've deleted all, if I'm going to have an optimized productive day, those apps are off my phone. I'm staying disciplined to stay off that on my browser. That helps me be focused. There's going to be times throughout my day where I go into Gmail and click inbox pause, which stops any mail from coming into my inbox and also on my phone. And that helps me just stay much more focused. Another thing that optimized productivity, I've identified what my frog is for the day. What's the most important thing for me to get done that I'm most likely to put off? And I eat that thing first thing. To me, productive day means that I have spent meaningful time with each of my children and my wife and connected with them in some small or large way. So those are the things that come to my mind. Amy said, I'm far more productive in the evening hours, but that's hard to do with kids and family. Yeah. Isn't that frustrating, Amy? Like that's where I think we all have different times in our lives where like we're most creative or most productive. In that case, it's not matching up too well when we've got family dinner and running kids to and from, and just even wore out from the day. Amy said 0.5. What does that mean? 0.5. Okay, cool. So there's my answer. Thank you, Bailey, for that thoughtful question. One other item that I had that I wrote down for today's show, and I'll hit the chime, was to denote a new topic. And I heard this come up twice just in conversations here recently. When you see stinking calculations, go into your estimating spreadsheet or software and mark the whole stinking thing up another 1%. If you're marking it up 1.45, mark it up 1.46. If you're doing $1 million of revenue, you just made thousands and thousands of dollars just by changing that. And nobody's going to be saying no to you. By the way, your costs continue to go up. Your expenses in your business continue to go up. Things aren't getting cheaper. Go up in there and raise your markup 1%. Some of you might say, Kyle, 1%, forget that. I'm going 3%. That would be a sweet use of your time. I do this show not so that you guys just, can be entertained, although I hope you're a little entertained, or this or that. I do it so that you actually take action to improve your business or your life. And if somebody, even if just one person watching this live on Facebook or on LinkedIn or wherever, or somebody listening to this recording as a podcast through Remodelers on the Rise, if one of you pauses and actually goes in and raises their markup, that's going to have an impact on your bottom line. And that will be time well spent for you listening to this and for me investing my time and putting the show on. And I love hearing when you take action. So don't ever be shy to reach out to me. By the way, my cell phone number is 517-902-8450. That's like my real cell phone number that just comes to my phone, which by the way is the Mini 13. I had the free upgrade. I don't like that big one. I like the Mini so that it fits in my pocket. Anyways, you people who like the big phone, I don't know why you like it so much. It's annoying. But text me if you've made that change. Email me, kyle@remodelyourmarketing.com. Let me know when you take action. It encourages me, it fires me up, and it allows me to encourage you. How about raise your profit by 1% instead of marking up the job 1%? That's fine too. That's wonderful. Michael, while we're at it, let's do both, my friend. Sorry, instead of marking up the job an additional 1%. Sure. Absolutely. And on the and subject, those problems you listed sounded like good problems. That's perspective, Kevin, right? That's perspective. I've got too much work. I got to figure out how to get the staffing. I've got those issues that we're going to run into in this business. Even that, keeping that positive frame of mind and keeping that positive perspective, that's not just kind of, foo-foo mental, gymnastics. That helps. And Michael says Galaxy Note 20 Plus Ultra. I mean, if that's not a name for a phone, I don't know what is. iPhones are the best, please, people. Why do we even talk about that? All right. We've covered a wide variety of topics today. What's a takeaway that you had? I'm going to try to grab 2 or 3 quick takeaways from you active participants here, and then we'll call it a day. It's warming up here in Michigan too. It's getting like 30, upper 30s. The snow is melting. Spring is on the way, people. I know we're all weary. I know we're all wore out from the winter for all of you, I don't know whether northerners or southerners for the most part. Spring and summer is on the way. The days are longer. The sun is shining more. Hang in there. Bailey says her takeaway was the power of and. It can be used. It can be annoying when used inappropriately, but it can be very encouraging otherwise. One more takeaway. By the way, the bottom of the screen says smart marketing alert. If you want to generate more repeat and referral work, give remodelersautopilot.com a try. It's $1 to try out. All right. That's the only takeaway I got for right now. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Be productive and have fun.